This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Welcome to the Starlight Ballroom. Hey!
Hello everyone and welcome to Shipwrecked and Comatose, the Red Dwarf podcast here on the We Made This podcast network. My name is Kurt North and we are continuing on our coverage of Series 8, which I think may have been a mistake at this point, but we're continuing on anyway.
Series 8 in general, or us covering it?
Us covering
Series
it.
8 in general.
Joining me this week is Mr. Mark Adams. Mark, how the devil are you?
I'm all right, and I hope nobody hates me because I pointed out some unpleasant truths over the last 3 episodes.
To be fair, if you go on the Reddits and you go on everywhere else, it is debated quite significantly. So you're not alone. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. To be honest, it's
No, I'm not worried about it. I'm just worried about losing listeners because we're too woke.
We can, if anybody that uses woke as an insult, we're happy to get rid of. Fuck off.
That's true, actually.
Oh,
That's
man, I mentioned
true.
this with Colin on the podcast. Oh, no. Hello, Colin.
Hello.
State your name.
It's Colin.
Just Colin.
Colin Jackson-Brown, technically, is my full... Well, Colin Peter Jackson-Brown is my full name, but I don't know. Yeah.
Colin Peter
What's your
Jackson-Brown.
middle name, Kurt?
David.
Mine's Christopher. Very boring middle names, isn't it?
My cousin's called Christopher.
My dad's called Christopher.
My uncle's called Christopher.
My dad's just took up tap dancing, you know.
Was it after watching Series 8 of Red Dwarf?
Maybe not, but yeah, just on the phone the other day, he said to me, I've taken up tap dancing, son. Like that's a normal thing for a 75-year-old widower to do. This is the man that's still got a fucking fax machine.
But does he tap dance on the fax machine or to the fax machine when it's making its weird...
I tell you what, if he did that and it was then superimposed into The Weekend, I can't wait for the weekend to begin. That would be fantastic. Mark Adams' dad with loads of women around him, photocopying the stuff, and he's just tap dancing away.
I would like him to tap dance on the fax machine because maybe it might break the fucking thing and he wouldn't be able to replace it.
Do some people listening even know what a fax machine is?
I know, right?
It's a pointless, archaic thing of the past.
Right, let's get to work, chaps. We are talking this week about the episode of Red Dwarf called Cassandra, Episode 8, Series 8, Episode 4. Series 8, Episode 4. Written by Doug Naylor and directed by Ed Bye. Original air date was the 7th of March 1999. So, Cassandra, this is an interesting episode. What are your general thoughts on this one, Mark?
So I want to point out to you something about the 7th of March 1999. Recently, we did the PBS specials with Vink.
In fact, that says, hang on a second. Original air date, 7th of March 1999 in brackets US and 11th of March 1999 UK.
Yes.
And that's what I was about to tell you about. They had a marathon of all of season 8 on a PBS channel in the US. And it was broadcast on the 7th of March 1999. And the problem with that was it hadn't been broadcast on the Beeb. They were still broadcasting it weekly. So from Cassandra onwards, episodes 4 to 8, they were broadcast in the USA on the same date before they were broadcast on the Beeb.
Well, I mean, they didn't have to worry about internet piracy there, because if they did, if you just tried to download the episode, it would have taken until after they were broadcast in the UK anyway to download.
True that.
Well, yeah, if we talk about a couple of things I want to mention on that then. First up, were people faxing information to the people of the UK and going, I've already seen it, you know, in true Cassandra style. And the second thing I've gone and forgotten.
Brilliant. But yeah, it's a fascinating thing that all the dates going forward are technically the 7th of March, but I think we should just ignore it and put the British air date with the kind of caveat that we know it was broadcast on the 7th of March in the States on a PBS channel. And fucking hell, the Americans get everything first.
my second point has come back to me. In the realms of BitTorrent and eMule and the like, what is your memories of getting American television?
A lot later than 1999.
LimeWire?
I mean, I used Napster a lot for music, but I never really used it for telly shows.
So, ironically, I'm not going to look for it because why am I doing that for an audio podcast?
In it.
It was Lost for me. I literally downloaded Lost. And bearing in mind, as I say today, if I wanted an episode that I needed to watch and it was, whatever, it would take me, all of 10 minutes to download it now? I remember Lost going to work, and it was I think it would be 2006 that I'd started to properly do it. So this was like maybe 2 or 3 years into Lost. And I would put my eMule on, I would port forward, I would forward my port so I could get access to it. And I would start downloading at 4 o'clock in the morning. By the time I got back at 6 o'clock at night, it had downloaded.
Nice.
So there you go. So those are the days. Those were the days. People don't know they were born, do they? Really don't.
It's true.
I almost never used it for telly, like Napster or whatever it was. I used stuff like Galaxia for music, but never really used it for telly. I did illegally stream wrestling around 2010.
Okay.
But as soon as the WWE Network was illegal, I went for that instead. I just didn't want to pay for fucking Sky. More recently, let's go on to my regular rant about Americans getting things first. I already touched on it, but I'm going to have my rant. We didn't get Chucky legally in any way, shape, or form at the same time as the Americans.
Going back to what Kurt said ages ago, what do we think about Cassandra? I think it's a really fucking good episode. I really enjoyed it.
I think it's one of the better ones of Series 8. I think you're right.
I actually do think it's probably the best episode of Series 8, to be fair.
Let me have a look through the episodes and I'll tell you whether I think it's the best.
I think this is the best episode since Series 6. I think Cassandra is better than anything in Series 7.
Ooh, that's an interesting comment.
Yeah, I think it's certainly the best of Series 8. Let me think about Series 7. Yeah, I think this is, you're right. I think this is the best episode of the series.
Yeah.
And it's the least icky.
Do you know, there might be onto something there.
Funny that.
Isn't it? Isn't it strange? I think there's only one joke in this. I think there's only the one.
We'll get to it as we go through.
We will.
Yeah. Well, let's get to it. We're in the prison scene. First of all, Cassandra. The name of Cassandra is not by any stretch of the imagination done accidentally. It's deliberately put on purpose. Colin, you were about to quote some Greek mythology to me probably now, are you?
Yeah, she's Cassandra was a Trojan princess who was cursed with the ability to see the future. So that kind of fits in.
It does. And not to mention an X-File podcast that I'm on where the cigarette smoking man's wife was called Cassandra as well, strangely enough, for the same reason.
Gosh.
Because it was all about the alien colonists coming to take over the Earth, but it was for good. And she was foretelling the future that was going to happen. So, yes, so there is a reason for it being called Cassandra. We end up first up in the bunks, and Holly is talking to Lister, and Holly's found a way that they could serve their sentence a lot quicker, and instantly it comes across as just fantastic, isn't it? It's just an amazing moment.
This scene is classic Red Dwarf. The scene with Holly and Lister talking and Holly suggesting that he should become a dog because he's read the National Enquirer, and when he brings up the picture of the man that's had the operation and it's just a dog, that's fucking brilliant.
Yes, it is.
This is, for me, this scene, I'd forgotten it because I only seen Series 8 when it was broadcast. But I think this scene is up there with Dog's Milk and up there with Betty or Wilma. This is one of the absolute classic bits of Red Dwarf dialogue that could be. It's one of those bits that obviously Doug Naylor and Rob Grant, when he was doing it, are utterly brilliant at. It's the sort of conversation that they could really shoehorn in anywhere in any series.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter where it is, wherever it's going to go, it's going to elevate the episode and make it absolutely, prime, utter genius.
Yeah. And I think for me, I think this is probably why I rate Series 8 a lot higher than a lot of other people, because one, it was in 1999. I was 19 years old. It was kind of like peak time for me, and it was just back, and it was a while since it had come back. I wasn't particularly fond of season 7 at the time. So coming back to this, and just right through all of the 8 episodes, there are some hilarious moments, but it's got some really high highs and some really low lows. And that's the problem with it. I think that, like both cheeks, man, that stuff. There's a lot of stuff to love about it, but then obviously it's got those lows, and I think that this one is a particular, and especially because it was National Enquirer as well, and just the way he goes, that's a dog. He says, it's good, isn't it?
See, even convinced you.
And it's only Monday as well, Mark.
It is only Monday. So I think you're absolutely right, Colin, about it kind of re-establishing the classic Red Dwarf of being in the quarters.
Yeah.
And a conversation with Holly as an important dynamic. But I actually put that it's also established itself as this is the new norm of they're in prison, and this is what they're having to go through, is this living in the prison quarters and stuff. And Devon Rowcliffe, who did the PBS stuff with us, he called Series 8 Porridge in Space.
Yeah.
And I think that's fucking perfect to describe Series 8.
I mean, the early series, before they started, finding lots of different planets to go to, was pretty similar, because they were trapped.
Mm.
They were essentially prisoners.
Well, that was the whole premise. The whole premise was porridge. That's where they got the original thing from. So, and like we've said in the previous episodes, Colin, you won't have heard, is that the whole reason why these scenes exist is because they were doing the remasters and went, actually, these scenes are worthwhile. Let's put them back into those scenes. So the fact that they found a way to do that using the prison is a perfect way of describing that.
Yeah, it's rediscovering what it's all about, isn't it?
So Rimmer asks about what happened to his life, his career, his prospects. He had everything, didn't he? He absolutely had everything.
Nope.
Nope. But again, I think, this scene is a very classic Red Dwarf thing of Rimmer and Lister winding each other the fuck up. And I think that that's kind of been allowed because this is almost a devolved Rimmer for this series.
It's the exact same Rimmer as you'd got in episode 1. It's, he hasn't died yet. He hasn't been, stuck with Lister for absolutely ages with just the two of them and the cat. So, they haven't moved on to that sort of the area of their life where they sort of have a bit of grudging respect for each other yet. And
it's done really, really well.
Yeah, and so the next section of this, and this is all wonderful stuff, and it just continues on. This first scene's incredible. Lister really wants to be positive. It's 18 months. You've got. Remember when you were 18 months and you were, firstborn, then 18 months, and the Rimmer retort is great. But I just want to point out that I was making notes really early this morning, right? And I am. As the team know, I tend to text and my thumbs are horrific. So my typos are just ridiculous. I have to edit everything. That's just why I hate Twitter. But apparently I put 18 months because you've got breasts at your bacon core.
Sorry, what?
Breasts at your bacon core.
Good.
I like bacon.
I like bacon.
I don't eat bacon.
Do you eat breasts?
Fuck no. Wait, are we talking about chicken?
Well, you don't eat that either. You're a vegetarian.
Yeah. Oh, you were talking about boobs.
You can push two breasts together and make a juicy giant peach.
No, that's bum cheeks. You want to squeeze my buttocks together?
Can we just say that the mode that we're in right now is usually the mode we're in after recording the second episode?
Yeah, we're in a bit of a weird mood. Good.
I was going to say that. Oh, what's it going to be like?
Everyone's going to love these episodes.
So anyway, the Canaries pack, and with the first meeting info, which he actually when he comes in, he knocks the table when he puts the bread thing on it. But what I particularly like is just Rimmer's glee. Rimmer's glee, and then it's as you say, the typical old school thing of build someone up to knock them down, and the fact that just Rimmer, Chris Barry plays it absolutely to perfection in this scene.
Yes, he does.
And the timing of the reveal that Lister has signed him up as well.
Yeah,
is utterly fantastic.
Yes, it is.
This is I don't know if this is the ick joke that you'd picked up on, Kurt, but there was one in this scene though, where there's a little bit of ableism from Rimmer, because he was saying that the Canaries stands for Convict Army, nearly all retarded, evil sheepshaggers, which obviously don't say retarded.
No, it's not a nice word to describe people.
And then he
as.
says there's only one X chromosome between them all as well, which is not nice.
It's not nice. It isn't nice.
I mean, I don't know. This is original Rimmer.
Yeah.
So he was vile. And I don't know. And I think 1999 was using the word retarded to describe people who, was it not good already?
We didn't. 1999, we were still using gay as an insult most of the time.
True.
1999 was not an enlightened time.
No.
We've learned since then there's various things that will come up and we'll discuss in a future episode that seemed acceptable at the time and absolutely fucking wasn't.
Yeah.
And there's also in this scene as well the thing about the golf swing as well when he's in the toilets.
Well, I mean, that's not too bad. I think it is probably quite sensible to just be to yourself when you're in prison, because he might get the shit kicked out of him if he looks at the wrong person.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
They also, I don't know if you mentioned this in the previous episodes, they did actually, Doug Naylor did get a lot of the ideas for what prison life was like from talking to Craig Charles.
That actually came up in one of the commentaries. I was going to mention that when it came up in the commentaries.
Let's just talk about the Canaries for a second then, because the Canaries is a way to get them off the ship. You've been talking about the porridge thing, and it's not lost on me that the best episode of this series is when they're not on the ship. Yeah. And so you've got both sides of it. You've got them on the ship and off the ship. And the Canaries is a good way to do it. It also introduces us to Kill Crazy as well for a start off.
Max out of EastEnders.
It is Max from EastEnders.
He's brilliant. I love Kill Crazy. He's a hilarious character. He's probably one of the most cartoony characters in the whole of Red Dwarf, I think.
Yeah, I think also worth mentioning in this scene is how magnificent Rimmer's anorak is. He's the only one who has the anorak. I mean, there's obviously a reason later on.
Yeah, I was trying to work out why he got to wear something different. Obviously, it pays off and there's a reason later on, but he can't have known that yet.
It was just that Rimmer is the kind of person that needs an anorak when everyone else is going to be all right without.
Yeah. But yeah, the Canaries, it's basically Suicide Squad.
Yes, it is.
Which the comics were fucking great. One of the films was all right. The second one, I think, is The Suicide Squad, is I thought quite good.
That's the one with Peter Capaldi in, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't hate the first one, but the second one was genuinely very good.
Yeah, I didn't hate the first one. There's a lot of other DC stuff I didn't like.
Most of it these days.
Yeah, and, I just turned when I turned on the Snyderverse and saw it was in 4:3. I just turned it straight back off again. I was like, no. I suffered the first one. I am not going through it again. And I think within the first 20 seconds, it is straight into slow motion. I'm like, no, I'm not watching 4 hours of slow motion. I'm sorry, I'm just not doing it.
I liked the Snyder Cut.
There's a bit in Garth Marenghi's Dark Place where they're talking about how they used to pad the episodes out by using slow motion footage. So perhaps it didn't need to be 4.5 hours long. He just used lots of slow motion.
We also kind of get like, and I like the format of this actually, because you've got like the opening scene of them kind of just discussing it, how they get into it. You've got the exposition at this point in the tank. And then we go to the venue, so it is very laid up like a proper episode as well. Which I know we talked about, the first part and the second lot of episodes later on. That there's a lot of padding because it's like to fill those episodes out, you need to put these sketch show bits in. But this one is the first one that's really tightly contained in an episode format.
Yeah.
Which is intriguing in itself. That as I say, we've talked about the 52 episodes. Get it to that point. In some ways, it's a bad decision because of how it's worked out. But
yeah.
We can talk about that as we get to the back end of the season. We didn't talk about in the previous episode, in the previous scene, but we talk about the fact that he was like thinking it was a singing troupe, and they recreate the Sunshine of My Life with lots of out of time dancing, but also
Brilliant.
in the porridge scene bit. When he goes, when he does that bit, I think is great. And the fact he says, now get on with it, and they repeat it again, which is my type of humour. I love that. I love those type of things when you just like, you think it's over and then they'll just go back to the same thing. So how did you make, and what about, on top of that, the captain actually, Hollister, being just, seems to be staring into space? Not quite sure what that was about. But, what did you make to this?
Their harmonies were really good. I was really quite impressed by their. No, I wasn't concentrating on the dancing because I'm more of a, listening to the music kind of thing. But that, they were better singers than I expected. I knew Craig Charles is good, and Danny John Jules, obviously, we know can sing. But I wasn't expecting it so much from the others.
The whole Les Dawson thing. He was actually a very good
Piano player,
so he could play it as badly as he did.
Yeah, you couldn't do the kind of thing he used to do, which was play it really well and then put exactly the wrong notes in for the comedy.
Yeah, so
if you weren't brilliant.
So that kind of leans the other way, doesn't it? It's actually quite difficult, unless you're actually legitimately tone deaf, to sing badly, isn't it, alongside somebody else?
I was going to say, I've heard a lot of people manage it.
Well, they're probably tone deaf.
Yeah.
I was actually doing a YouTube video the other night on like relative pitch, and there's like a little exam thing you can do. So I was going through that the other day, just because I was bored. I was like, no, I haven't got perfect pitch, but I can generally, I've got relative pitch. I can tell what a first, a third, and a fifth are when I'm listening to harmonies and listening to tracks generally. And obviously playing stuff, I can, that's going to go to that, or, the progression or whatever. I know exactly, we kind of learn those things, don't you? But
with you being a bass player, that's at least sort of a guitarist, and we do everything by ear. So,
well, thank you.
I would love to have perfect pitch.
I can do it sometimes, but it's not that accurate. But I can normally hear something and work out what note it is fairly quickly.
Yeah, I'm always there or thereabouts. It's like, that's got to be a G, or you can kind of get there's certain major chords, probably most, because they're the ones you tend to hear the most. We start looking at the Sunshine of My Life. Rimmer gets his balls crushed.
Yeah, he does. They're obsessed with his genitals in this fucking series. Absolutely obsessed.
Is it because he's a human again? And they're just going to tell you what, we're just going to rip him literally to shreds.
Yeah, because when he was a soft light hologram, they couldn't. When he was a hard light hologram, he was nearly indestructible. So that makes sense. It's his turn.
And then Kill Crazy, which to me is probably the best Red Dwarf fourth wall break in history. When he, let's kill something!
And he just stares at the camera.
That's got to be ad-libbed. That has to be ad-libbed. It has to be, surely. Is it?
I don't know, but it could be.
It has to
Either
be.
way, it works.
It does. It's hilarious. And then we get a joke. Now, there's a couple of things in here that I want to mention. I'm going to mention it, but I'm not going to go into detail. So there's two things that happen. So this, and you might have seen it on some of the Dave trailers potentially, but there's the shaking from side to side like a leaf. That's your shadow, sir.
Yeah.
That's a joke that will be replayed later on. It's not a massive thing to talk about. And the general story of Cassandra itself is there's another episode in the Dave channel that utilizes that element, that kind of same kind of similar thing. Very different, but uses the same kind of technique of like we've had with Future Echoes, we've got with this, it will use this trope. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, because Future Echoes is like a future echo of this episode, which they actually point out in the episode.
Yeah.
I think I suspect that was added at a later point in the writing process where they'd gone, people are going to point out that this is very Future Echoes. Let's mention that we've had something similar like this before.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting sci-fi debate, isn't it? Does knowing your future change whether or not you can change your future? And that is exactly what Future Echoes was about from a science fiction perspective. But it was also 15 years prior to this, wasn't it? So it's a science fiction fucking sitcom. You can do what you like.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I'm not dissing it. I'm just saying that what you will see, and obviously this isn't a spoiler, but what you will see is in later seasons that things are referenced a lot more. It's almost as like it's been almost forced continuity. You know, it's like, oh, remember Future Echoes, or oh, remember Sirens, or you remember Poly.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing. It's they'll mention
they do that a
things
lot
that
in this series.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. This is the first kind of post Rob Grant. He seems to be fascinated on trying to tether some of the continuity loosely with those just mentioning things, which is an interesting thing that they actually are starting to do that, and they've got the wealth of content, haven't they? So he needs to do that, and as you say, probably knowing the fans, he'll probably go, I know they're going to mention this. So,
well, that's the thing. It's some of that kind of thing where it's references back to previous things is fan service. It's put in there for the fans to go,
yeah, true.
The danger is when it starts to get slightly overused, which I don't think the Future Echoes and Cassandra type thing, I don't think is overused because, like you said, it's twice in 15 years.
Yeah.
Dwayne Dibley sort of seemed he was maybe being overused the second time he appeared, and I know he reappears later on. So that was potentially something that would have worked better with just him appearing once, but this I'm absolutely fine with.
The Cassandra element is utilized again, but it's a sci-fi trope. It's having someone that can tell the future is just, you're going to get that in any TV show, any sci-fi show. It's the same as time loops are always going to be put in together at some point, aren't they? And there's always going to be those kind of stories that will play. Heaven Sent, for example, is that an example of that? So things like that is always going to be in there. What about Cassandra? What did you make to these scenes in here? There was one I wanted to just particularly point out, which is just more of a looking at it from a TV show perspective, is that she has to repeat her own words, which showcases that they are live to an audience, because she stops and then has to say it again, which I like. I like those moments because you think it blends that theatre production with the sci-fi story, and I've always liked that, and you see that right the way through, and I think that's something that Seven misses. Yeah,
there's bits where she's really obviously waiting for the laugh to go down before she says her next line, which I hadn't realised. I thought that this series was filmed the same, where they did have a studio audience and then played it to them later on. But that obviously made me realise that wasn't the case. And then I found an article where there was a couple of guys that had actually gone and there's an article on an old Red Dwarf fan website that has got some of the guys that went to the filming of the first 3 episodes. Some of it was pre-recorded and they got shown the screens and things like that. But yeah, a lot of it was filmed in front of a studio audience, which is, I think that really helps with the dynamic of it.
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
it gets the comedy back to, it gives the energy back that was perhaps a bit lacking in the previous series. But yeah, Cassandra herself, I was absolutely convinced that she was a completely different actress. I was all the way through watching it until the credits appeared. Got notes in there about it being Zoe Wanamaker because she looks like that. And to the point where when the credits came up and it says it's Geraldine McEwen, I was like, what? And then brought my laptop downstairs to show my wife and I was like, which actress is that? And she's like, that's Zoe Wanamaker. Like, nope. Oh, she's like, no, it's not. It's the other one. So, yeah. But Zoe Wanamaker was in a Doctor Who episode as a
character that was a face called Cassandra.
Yeah. She was the big flat skin thingy that kept going,
moisturize me.
Yeah, which I didn't realise until after I'd already mistaken her for Cassandra.
That's the Mandela effect that happening.
Do you know who actually got Geraldine McEwen to do this part? Alan Rickman convinced her.
Alan Rickman?
Because she was Mortiana in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, which was Alan Rickman's mum when he was the Sheriff of Nottingham. And so they stayed friends, and it was him that convinced her to do the role.
So what I think is brilliant about Geraldine McEwen is that this is Miss fucking Marple.
Yeah.
And Miss Marple is the evil computer. And I'm sorry, as evil as the computer can be, you still can't flip the bird at Miss Marple. Rude.
And it's beautifully written as well. I like the lines where he says, "I never said you would, but how do I do?" But you do.
Geraldine McEwen is so good as Cassandra. Like, so good. This is some of the very best acting in all of ever. And I love Chloe Annette, but she's outshone by Geraldine McEwen in this episode. And, I'm always wanking over Chloe Annette's acting. Miss Marple smashes it.
She does. I never thought I'd hear that come out of your mouth, but
That's definitely the fanfic we do not want to
read. Do you want to know how Lister dies? Would you want to know how Lister dies?
I want to know how Lister dies. Well, we found out. But
we found out in Future Echoes.
Yeah, there's a lot of different alternate ways that he dies, but a lot of them, he's quite old.
I mean, obviously, this one, she's just lying.
Yeah.
She's playing with him, isn't he? But the fact there's this is the classic, like, old Red Dwarf humour where it's like, it depends where your teeth are. Yeah, they things like the 181 with your teeth. Brilliant. It's like, are they not your breasts? Stuff like that, which I think is great. Crichton, it says that the ship was abandoned because earlier Hollister had said that the ship was completely abandoned. There's no skeletons, there's nothing on board. Everything seems to be clear. He basically reads the mission directive. So why is it a theory? Crichton reads, he says, my theory is such and such. Well, I read it on this mission directive. Well, it's not a theory then, Crichton, is it?
Well, it's a theory that it can be very sure about. You could still play it off as a theory, and that's what he's done.
Idiots always say that the theory of relativity is just a theory. Fuck off.
It's a theory you give to your relatives.
Yes, that's also true.
But we do find out why. So the bulkhead is shipping with water. We find out that the ship was abandoned down there because of Cassandra, and it was dangerous, and they just wanted to get rid of it. And then we get the finding out that actually Rimmer is the one that's going to die, and the play on words. And I think this is where it becomes quite clever in the way it tells the story that people's names not and all that type of thing, and the ignorance and if all ignorance he's got, then, he must be the most powerful man in the world and all that type of thing. I think this central element is just really, really strong.
And this is why Rimmer had the jacket on, because it was covering his name tag.
But I think it was really well done because he is the kind of bloke that would wear an anorak. Like I said, I think it's at least makes sense in a Rimmer is a bit of a wimp kind of way.
Yeah. Yeah, and it works to his advantage, which is the kind of thing that he would absolutely use.
Rimmer becomes really, really clever, and with the power of ignorance, that he asks Crichton to go back through his databanks and see if at any point anyone called him Rimmer, which is brilliant, genius. I love that. Science fiction at its best, utilising actual things to actually go, right, this is the hole in that sci-fi element, and to go, actually, great. And just to hear like Rimmer say things like, never Rimmer, call me asswipe, call me fish breath, never Rimmer.
Well, it's really noticeable how Cassandra refers to him as Arnold and doesn't even refer to the rest of them by name. When they all arrive, it's, Arnold, I've been waiting for you to turn up. She didn't say Arnold, Dave, Chrissy, Crichton, and Kat. It was just Arnold that she addresses. And it's weird to hear him called Arnold because no one ever calls him Arnold. So it does kind of make you wonder where she got his first name from, because nobody ever says it.
Well, no one calls him asswipe either.
This is true. Not at this point.
No. But what Not does say is, take me to the mainframe. Frame.
Yeah, Not's a great character. And I think I'm glad that even though he was killed off here, he does come back briefly in subsequent episodes as well.
I don't know if about you, but whenever he says that your name is not, it always goes back to Out of Time for me.
Right. Not what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just before he runs into the bazooka, into the doorway, into the smeg up. But yeah, and so that when Not does die, and Cassandra just basically says, "But I've already told you," and then rhymes off everybody again, which again is great interplay, because if you're not paying attention to the actual script or what's being said on TV, you're actually going, "Oh yeah, he didn't actually." Everyone's going to die, but
and they didn't mention Rimmer.
And I think I think that's really good writing.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's good. I like it.
Is this all I'm going to get off you two today? Yep. Yeah.
On that bit, yeah.
Well, it's just nice to be able to talk about an episode of season 8 that I don't fucking hate.
For now.
Well, I'm just about to talk about Crichton using the gun, and he has Lister to duck, and it's like the most, again, talking about the thing about Series 8 is it's quite slapstick. It's very slapstick. Yeah. And it is part of the humour I actually do like about it, but it's, the fact that he goes, duck again, sir. It's like, you just get all that thing. But using the power of invulnerability is an interesting one, especially given that for some reason, the world is going to not allow that to happen. The Final Destination, you've got death coming for them. You've in Lost, there's elements in Lost where, there's a character there who the island hasn't done with him, and he cannot die. He's tried shooting himself. So very similar plot armor, which is a good nice way to play it, just to show that actually I'm not going to die, because I know I'm not going to die, because it's all been predetermined. And that is something I do want to talk about later on in predeterminism when we get to the Kachansky scene. But the idea that they can surround Rimmer and protect him.
The escort scene's brilliant. It's essentially an escort quest that they fail, and
he just falls through a hole in the floor.
Yeah, and it's fucking great, and it is such a good gag, and it's not even words. It's brilliant. Yeah. It's just brilliant. I loved that scene
when they circle him and they're looking and they're doing all the kind of the James Bond kind of entourage and the kind of.
But it's something that you can't do in the first series because you hadn't got the characters as well established as you have in the 8th series. They are all very comfortable playing who they're playing. They know their characters. And so their kind of silent body language, as they're just playing these characters, not talking, but knowing the characters, it is something that you don't get. It's impossible to get in an earlier series because they didn't have this connection with their characters that they do at this point. And it works so perfectly.
They've also got this, there's a sort of physical thing of the way that they've got this, the Red Dwarf cast have got this sort of shuffly walk kind of thing where they all sort of move in a quite a weird way together. And they've done it various times throughout the different series over the years.
Yes.
And I don't think I've ever seen it. You know, you could do that kind of movement and people would noticeably go, oh, that's Red Dwarf, without even thinking. You know, it's not something I've ever heard get mentioned. And it is something that they all seem to do and is very funny when they do it.
The Red Dwarf Shuffle.
Yeah.
There's a Christmas special for you.
Should have been the B-side to Tongue Tied instead of the Tabby Ranks remix.
Oh, the Tabby Ranks remix. Fucking hell.
It was the Tabby Ranks remix rank, by any chance?
It was a very old
Tabby
time
Rank.
1992 ragga track. Very dated.
Oh.
However, talking about deep cuts, the reference to the opera game popped me, massively popped me. I was like, that is brilliant. They've even got, because obviously it's easier to do those deep cuts, those references to previous stuff and previous series for all the other characters. But to have something so iconic for Kachansky really did make me smile.
Yes.
And I don't know about you.
I'd rather play the opera game.
And that was Series 7, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, because I've watched Series 7, the end of... I watched the episode, up to the episodes that I recorded, which was the second and third and fourth episodes of Series 7, and then didn't get round to watching the rest until last week.
Right.
So that's really fresh in my mind.
Brilliant.
We get stuck in the diving bell, and Kachansky comes down. Every time Kachansky goes down that hole, I think she's hanging from the actual hole itself until you see the rope come down. I'm like, oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Every single time, I don't know, it's a mental block in my head that I just feel that she's just like, you know, using her skills to actually get down in there. They go back to see Cassandra, and Cassandra drops the bomb that Hal, he's going to die.
What I don't get about this, right, is why it's such a big deal to Rimmer. We've gone into quite extensive coverage of how he achieves it, and let's not, but he has had a lot of sex recently with a lot of different women. Why is it such a big deal?
He hasn't had a lot of sex recently because it was all psychotropically done. He wasn't in the reality that he was doing it.
Yeah, but in his brain, he's going to have the memory thinking that he had.
But in the brain, if you have a memory that you had a dream that you had sex, it's still not the same, is it?
Yeah, I suppose.
It's not quite a dream, though. You remember playing VR.
But there's no psychotropically, they're not. They were drugged.
Yeah.
So it's a heightened state because the whole point of that story was to find out what the truth of that story was. So the whole psychotropic thing was to heighten their...
So you're saying that because he's only had virtual sex that my point is irrelevant? Fuck. That's annoying. Because it's kind of right. Shit. Because a virtual wank is not as good as a wank, is it? Having to think about a wank isn't the same as a wank, is it? Shit, you're absolutely right. Bollocks. bollocks, but I hate being wrong.
It depends how, in the future, when this is set...
Are you saying the groinal attachment allows you to ejaculate?
No, what I'm saying is, because you're saying whether that invalidates whether all the stuff that you were complaining about in the previous episode was as problematic as it was. It depends on...
it is.
I was going to say, but it depends on the level of AI.
No, I'm talking about my point now, whether that's irrelevant.
Yeah, no, yeah. We're not saying about the actual thing, because it's written, so that we're not... That debate's done and dusted. That's like...
Definitely done and dusted.
It shouldn't have been written. But what I'm saying from this point is that he's... During those things, he was psychotropically drugged. It was a dream state, and its thing. But my other, like, to double down on what I've just said as well, is you've got to remember this is original Rimmer who doesn't like Lister.
Yeah,
but there is
a revenge thing.
Yeah.
Which is actually even more horrible.
Yeah. But what I like about the scene with Kachansky is Chris Barry, some point, became a fantastic actor. Like, he was fine in series 1, 2, 3, but I think particularly series 7, series 8, he's a fantastic actor. And the intonation of the two sentences that are the same, it's coming true, it's all coming true, it's all coming true. The delivery is perfect.
Do you think because he'd got Chloe Annette there, who is a fantastic actress, do you think he maybe had to up his game a bit, and that might have helped?
Well, this I was going to touch upon this because there's a couple of moments in this where you get that old school Red Dwarf where there's almost like a heart to heart, where Rimmer goes on about like thanks for being there and just having that little bit of actually I'm not a bad guy really kind of thing, and he's just kind of playing that a little bit. And now the problem I have actually with the Rimmer stuff really in this is that it is slightly out of character for the original Rimmer. It is in character for him to get back at Lister, but we're not seeing a lot more. We're not seeing that snarky Rimmer. Like we're not seeing it all the time. He's actually quite a camaraderie of them a lot of the time. So there's a bit of give and take with that. But that, I say with the story where it's like thanks for being with me and stuff like that, and as you say with being opposite Chloe, that works dramatically and it's a nice moment, and that's something that Doug actually uses quite a bit in later series, even like last series he did it. So having that is great, but also it also has some great moments for Chloe, which is one of my favourite moments where he says, "Oh, but she promised." It's just absolutely perfect. Why aren't you worried that I'm in bed with him? It's just because I know why. Oh, she promised. It's just great. It's a great moment.
There's another great line in this, one that maybe not quite quotable dwarf, but definitely a joke that I crack all the time. Funnily enough, it's a joke about sex because this is me. And if you hadn't only come 60 minutes earlier, 30, 10, 2 would have done. I do that to other people, like saying, how long were you? 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds. Yeah. So I do crack very, very similar jokes to that about sex and the length of time people take to have sex.
Yeah.
But it's as quotable Dwarf's going to get this series, unfortunately, because I think Quotable Dwarf's definitely finished for me because I just didn't watch series 7 and 8 anywhere near as much as I watched the first 6.
Both cheeks, man. She nearly wore them down to the bone.
That doesn't count. That's new Quotable Dwarf.
Where's the medically needed a pint quote? Was that in the first couple of episodes?
Yes, that was when he was talking about it. Yeah, he talked about taking money from his purse.
Yeah, that's the Spanish Armada.
Yeah.
It's like, it was gross in there. Because medically needed a pint is Quotable Dwarf for me. I actually do say that. It's like, right, I'm going to the pub because I medically need a pint. I do say that a lot. But another moment with Arnold, that's me, giving it Riz.
Giving it Riz.
I don't think that's a phrase that has ever been... Has that been used elsewhere?
I've got a friend called Riz, and I'm never going to use the term giving it Riz.
Unless you're giving something to him, like passing him something.
I'm never going to give it to Riz. Sorry, Riz.
Poor
not
Riz.
even if you get blind drunk.
I'm not his type.
Okay. Doesn't excuse your other 4 senses, though. Again, these little moments right through this episode, like even like sort of when she says, "There's no way I am getting out of my clothes and into that bed," and the water comes on, which is like just generally quite funny. It's all right. Yeah. And it says, "I am soaking wet." Well, why don't you?
Yeah, it's very, very well done. Again, it feels like proper classic Red Dwarf humour.
Yeah, definitely. So, seduced by predeterministic theory. Mark, have you ever been seduced by predeterminism before?
I've been seduced by a lot of things.
Predeterminism isn't one of them.
Probably not. I don't know. I've been drunk a lot of times as well.
What about the sci-fi trope then of being of predestination, predeterminism?
I think it's Smeg.
Think it's Smeg?
No, I don't. I genuinely like the philosophy of it. I love that you can go a lot deeper than they did in this, and there are science fictions out there that are holy fucking shit. They're a head fuck when you think about it. But I love science fiction like this. I've always loved weird, timey-wimey science fiction stuff. It doesn't have to be like kind of like LOL like this, or kind of children orientated like Doctor Who. You get much heavier, kind of harder sci-fi that looks at predetermined stuff, and I love it. I find it fucking fascinating.
And especially if we jump ahead a little bit to the end where Lister does his little speech, which is again, it's following the Star Trek story really. It's like, so you get your first, going back to what I was saying before, you get your first scene, your opening scene to give you the general premise. You get the little speech or the kind of the conference table, which is the tank. You get the actual adventure, then you've got, I've learned something today.
Yeah.
It's just that right the way through.
And it's a great speech. It's actually some pretty, for Lister, fairly deep philosophy. But then that's what he's evolved into over the years and years and years that his character has been developing.
What did you make to having a £9.99 Argos fan in the cause and effect?
Well, you mentioned Final Destination earlier. That end is basically like a Rube Goldberg like Game of Mousetrap sort of thing, isn't it? And it is like some of the bits in Final Destination where you've got like the water going across the floor and then somebody slipping on it and then a load of knives flying out. Apparently that scene was originally quite a lot longer as well, and they had to cut it down with like loads more explosions and stuff.
Well, there's an episode of X-Files called The Goldberg Variation with a very young Shia LaBeouf.
That's an early-ish one, isn't it?
That's season 7.
Oh no, I haven't seen it then. Yeah. Fair enough.
So that whole like cat and mouse game, basically, isn't it? But the fact is, it's just like this £9. I'm just making up £9.99 fan, but it's just like, let's just put a general standard normal fan in this futuristic 3 million years away that you've still got a 3-pin plug-in fan.
The set, other than that, kind of looks a bit like a Series 5, like hollow ship type set, doesn't it? But yeah, then there's a random fan there, which is it's a little bit like the random things that the polymorph turns into.
Like
It's got that charm. It's that charm, isn't it? That's what it is.
Would they still have slinkies in?
Everyone loves a slinky.
Yeah, but do they love it in 3 million years' time?
I think they'll probably still be making slinkies in 3 million years' time, just because if they're anything like the ones that my daughter has had at least 6 of, she breaks them within a day. So they may need to keep making them to replace the ones that get broken by, kids that twist them all up.
I did give my niece a slinky for Christmas, so they are still relevant today.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Is there anything that I've missed that in your notes?
Craig Charles's face at the end is fucking magnificent. He's done fantastic face this entire series. He's just face.
Yeah,
I enjoy Craig Charles's face. Do you want my commentary notes before we go?
Final, yeah, go for it.
So, I've been doing it for all of them, and there wasn't very much really on this that I found very interesting. But what they do is, at the very start, it's getting to the point where there's too many voices, because they've got the 4 main cast. They've got Chloe Anna, they've got Norman Lovett, and they've got Mac McDonald. That is a lot of voices.
Yeah.
And Mac gets completely lost in the shuffle. And Lovett just behaves like a douche for the whole time. and he immediately complains, and it's not the first time he's done it in 4 episodes as well, that he doesn't get enough in this episode. He hasn't fucking changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the only other thing is that despite this kind of competition between 7 voices, they all go completely quiet for a significant amount of time when Geraldine McEwen talks. And then they clock it and go, well, she was just a fantastic actress, wasn't she? Which is brilliant. And the only other thing was there's quite a lot of digs about Captain Butler. And Craig Charles just waits for them to shut up and move on.
Was that about the same sort of time as this, Captain Butler?
It was in between Series 7 and Series 8.
Right.
But the commentaries were recorded in the mid-thousands.
So that calls the end of this episode. We will be returning next week for Crazy TV.
Indeed.
So before we do that, where can people find you online, Mr. Mark Adams?
Twitter and Instagram. I have the same handle. It is Mark Adams HC. Twitter tends to be me talking about various things. Instagram tends to be me begrudgingly trying to push my business as a celebrant. Other than that, I'm only doing one other podcast at the moment. It's called Chucky Vision. We talked about it earlier. It is about Chucky and Child's Play and Chucky adjacent things like, well, recently we've done Batteries Not Included. And to find out what that link is, you need to tune into Chucky Vision.
Chucky
Vision on Twitter. All right, it's the title.
Colin Jackson-Brown.
Hello.
Where can we find you? What are you up to?
I'm in my house at the moment doing a podcast. Mark was just taking a drink then. I timed that very well indeed.
I nearly splaffed into my microphone.
Splaffed. I like that.
Splutter laugh, innit?
We Dig Music, where me and 2 of my friends pick a different year each month and fight over our 10 favourite songs each, so top 30 songs of that year. And there's also Free With This Month's Issue, where me and my friend Ian, plus a different guest each month, listen to old free CDs from Kerrang, Enemy, Melody Maker, Q Magazine, that kind of thing. You can find both of those on wedigpodcasts.com, and you can find them both on Twitter. Free With This Month's Issue is This Month's Issue, at This Month's Issue, and We Dig Music is at We Dig Music PCast.
Excellent. Well, you can find me on Linktree, so linktr.ee/rmuldrake. It's RMULDRAKE. Find out how I got on with all 3 seasons of Star Trek Picard, now finished. If there's something that's been announced after the closure of that, then that is me having to go back in time. So, so yes, but there is stuff happening on the Make It So podcast, which I can't talk about right now, but by the time this airs, there's probably be announcements and all kinds. Then you've got my Yellow Jackets podcast, which is with Matt Latham. Don't know if you've heard of him. Some sort of guy who does music stuff and apparently likes some sort of show about female soccer players who crash land in a plane in the Canadian forest.
It sounds a bit like Hob Bolness.
Does sound a little bit like that, yeah.
Whatever happened to Hob?
We don't discuss that on this podcast. Just a bit of a sore point. Okay, yeah, so you can find that at Yellow Jacket Pod. And all the other hosts of things like Xcast, etc., 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 etc. Find them on Linktree. That's the best place to go.
Pick up a podcast.
Pick up a podcast. That's a blast from the past. I still get downloads from that. People still listen to it. I know it's in the ones, but I still get
in the ones.
Well, the thing is though, it's like it's talking about an announcement from the Xcast from 6 years ago. It's talking about podcasts that don't even exist anymore.
The vast majority of them don't exist anymore, do they?
Yeah, probably not. Anyway, let's get on with this. Thank you for listening. This has been Red Dwarf's Cassandra, and until next time,
let's go kill something!
Do you believe in the existence of X-Files podcasts? Then the truth is in here. I'm Tony.
I'm Sarah.
I'm Carl.
And I'm Drake.
And the Xcast is devoted to all things X-Files, such as in-depth episode discussions.
I love the 8th season being like, no, you're saying goodbye. And that's something pop culture doesn't do enough.
Interviews with many of the cast and crew from the show.
I
had to audition repeatedly. I mean, I went in, I read for Chris and Frank, first I read for the casting director, Rick, and then I made it past that hurdle and read for Chris and Frank. Had a lovely meeting with them.
And special roundtable chats, commentaries, and fun bonus episodes.
But this is great. Mulder just having no idea what's going on.
On this beautiful boat with people not really speaking English.
You can find us on the We Made This podcast network, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all good podcast players.
We'll see you in the basement. But until then,
Trust.
No.
One. Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast, was created and produced by Mark Adams and Kurt North. You can find us on Twitter at Red Dwarf Pod, and we are part of the We Made This podcast network.